Hello there, my name is Sahel, and today we'll be doing our 6th IGCSE economics video. Today we'll be talking about the role of markets in allocating resources. So I'll talk about basically the market system works. The market system basically the whole thing about the market system is that the two main components, buyers and sellers. Buyers, of course, are people who buy things, and sellers are the ones who sell things, products and services, right? So basically, it's very important when it comes to, markets are very important when it comes to the allocation of scarce resources, because, markets are how the resources are allocated, at least in, capitalist societies. There's also two other terms, market equilibrium and market disequilibrium. So I'll show you what market equilibrium is. So basically here, this is market equilibrium. So market equilibrium is basically when, market equilibrium is basically where the supply curve and the demand curve meet on the supply and demand diagram. It's basically the price, more specifically the price and quantity of the point that intersects both lines. So, and basically anything that's outside of it is basically market disequilibrium. Basically, here where the two lines intersect is when demand and supply are equal to one another. We'll be covering demand and supply in a later video. My nose is really bad today. And PE basically stands for price equilibrium, and QE stands for quantity equilibrium. Combine the two here. Anyways, so yeah, basically market equilibrium is when the demand is not equal to supply. While market equilibrium is where supply is equal to demand. Now, there are three main questions associated with the establishment of the economic problem when it comes to resource allocation. What to produce, how much, and for whom. So what are these two questions? What do these questions mean in our world? Here's the thing. What to produce? Well, we have scarce resources, and you have to make a decision on what to produce from it. So we better produce, for the betterment of society, things that are the most beneficial. Things that are most beneficial for society. For example, do you want to spend it on, like video games, or do you want to spend it on, healthcare and stuff like that? One is nice, one's a luxury, in fact, in a lot of countries. But one is very much essential for everybody. So, yeah. And there's also stuff like, for example, yeah, questions like that, basically. What, whom, and how much? Well, some stuff might be need more than others. For example, water is the most important resource we need. So we produce a lot of it, or we produce a lot of movies, or you produce, basically how much do you produce has to do with if it's capable of producing that much, because it may drain a lot of resources which may be needed for other stuff. That's the whole issue with how much to produce. And for whom? Well, what should I produce? Because everyone has their own needs, right? So, and wants. So who should we produce this for? That's a really big question, because it also has to do with ethics. Well, so who do we produce it for? Do we produce it for the guy? Do we produce it for criminals? Or do we produce it for law-abiding citizens? that poses a lot of ethical questions. So that's the whole. And although that's not covered in this topic, in the subject, it is important to note that ethics are very much important when it comes to economics, as they come hand in hand. And yeah, when it comes to understanding economics, ethics, it's also important to understand as well, because if you look at everything from an economics perspective, you may be not taking into account the ethic. You may not be taking into account the ethical implications. Now, so yeah, for whom to produce, it's basically saying which ones do we prioritize more, and which ones do we want to meet earlier than others. About prioritization. Do you produce for a lot of people or produce it for a little? That little might be more greedy. For example, there may be a lot of people who only need a little bit and a small amount of people who need a lot. Who do you produce it for? That's the main question about that. That's the main question for the third part of the three main questions. Now, what about price mechanism? So basically, price mechanism is inherent in the market system because it does provide answers to these three questions. Because think about price mechanism, right? It's basically how prices are determined. So basically, like for example, the price will be this, price will be that. That determines who do we give it, who do we allocate resources for, what do we allocate resources for, and how much of the resource we have we allocate. Because price mechanism is very important about that, because price mechanism is it's just basically very important. And when it comes to these three questions, what's the role of the market economy when it comes to allocating resources? Well, the market economy, when it comes to allocating scarce resources, is very important because that is basically how most modern economies allocate and what do you call it? Allocate resources that part of the four factors, because pretty much the entire world is using the market system now, with some exceptions. So that's basically very important, and that's why it's very important. And how does it relate to PPC? Well, the market determines how much of a good you want to produce. Do you want to produce a lot of this good or a lot of this good? It also relates to opportunity cost, because the market determines which is considered the opportunity cost, which one's the optimal choice. It determines what's your options. It determines how much you produce of something. It determines for whom you're producing. And how is the market system related to demand and supply? Well, this diagram has to do with, because the whole thing about the market system is that it's predicated on demand and supply. Without demand and supply, there is no market system. They go hand in hand. They're very much essential to one another. And I know that it can be hard to grasp on some things of what I'm saying, but what I'm trying to say is the market system is very important because it is the way most of the world operates, economically speaking. And it's the way we determine who do we produce for, what do we produce, and how much we produce. Price mechanism is a part of the market system, as it determines what price of certain goods and services are at each part of the demand and supply diagram. For example, prices will be lower here, but so will quantity. demand will also be lower, but supply might be higher. So yeah, price mechanism is an integral part of the market system, and the market system is basically an important part of most major economies in the world, and it's an important part of how most people's lives are determined. And yeah, thank you for listening.